Hi, this is Jason Acanio, once again welcoming you to another episode of Jay's Retro Toys and Games for Wednesday, May 4th, 2022. It's episode 14, and tonight we've got a game that has been around pretty long. It was under a different title, but the game was invented in 1883 and then was patented in 1971 as a variant. Yes. Reversi, strategy board game for two players played on an 8x8 uncheckered board. It was invented in 1883, but we're looking at the name of the game that was a variant with a fixed initial setup of the board, patented in 1971. Today, we're looking at Othello, right here on Jay's Retro Toys and Games. Hope you're having a good middle of the week. May the 4th be with you here for all you Star Wars fans out there who've been celebrating Star Wars Day. I don't know, but it goes through some of this that they have. It's like national, we've done all those national holiday days and everything. Yeah, that's usually how it goes. But tonight on episode 14, we're going to be looking at a game that pretty much been around since 1883, and then under the name Reversi, but then in 1971 was patented for the game that we all probably remember playing when we were growing up, sort of like uncheckered checkers almost. It's called Othello. Yep. And the basics of Othello is that there are 64 identical game pieces called discs, which are lit or light on one side and dark on the other. Players take turns placing discs on the board with their assigned color facing up. And during a play, any discs on the opponent's color that are in a straight line and bounded by the disc just placed, and another disc of the current player color are turned over to the current player's color. The object of the game is to have the majority of the discs turned to display one's color when the last playable empty square is filled. So Englishmen Lewis Waterman and John W. Mollett both claim to have invented the game of Reversi in 1883, each denouncing the other as a fraud. The game gained considerable popularity in England at the end of the 19th century. The game's first reliable mention is on August 21st, 1886 edition of the Saturday Review. Later mention includes an 1895 article in the New York Times, which describes Reversi as something like Go Bang, played with 64 pieces. In 1893, the German games publisher Ravensburger started producing the game as one of its first titles. Two 18th century continental European books dealing with a game that may or may not be Reversi are mentioned on page 14 of the spring 1989 Othello Quarterly, and there has been speculation, so far without documentation, that the game has older origins. A Japanese publication in 1907 titled World Games Rules Complete Collection describes the board game Reversi with the same rules as Othello, where the first four pieces go in the center in a diagonal pattern, and the player who cannot make a move simply passes. Now, the modern version of the game as we know it, the most regularly used rule set, and the one used in international tournaments, is marketed and recognized as Othello. It was patented in Japan in 1971 by Goro Hasegawa. Legal name is Satoshi Hasegawa, then a 38-year-old salesman. Hasegawa initially explained that Othello was an improvement on Reversi, but from around 2000, he began to claim that he invented it in Mito, regardless of Reversi. Hasegawa also claims that the origin of Reversi Othello dates back 5,000 years. Now, Hasegawa established the Japan Othello Association in March of 1973 and held the first national Othello championship on April 4th of 1973 in Japan. The Japanese game company Zukuda Original, launched Othello in late April 1973 in Japan under Hasegawa's license, which led to an immediate commercial success. The name was selected by Hasegawa as a reference to the Shakespearean play Othello, the Moor of Venice, referring to the conflict between the Moor Othello and Iago, and more controversially, to the unfolding drama between Othello, who is black, and Desdemona, who is white. The green color of the board is inspired by the image of the general Othello, valiantly leading his battle in a green field. It can also be linked to a jealousy competition, jealousy being the central theme in Shakespeare's play, which popularized the term green-eyed monster, since players engulf the pieces of the opponent, thereby turning them to their possession. Othello was first launched in the U.S. in 1975 by Gabriel Industries, and it also enjoyed commercial success there. Sales have reportedly exceeded 600 million, and more than 40 million classic games have been sold in over 100 countries. Hasegawa's How to Play Othello in Japan of 1974 was published in 1977 in an English translation entitled How to Win at Othello. Kabushiki Kasha Othello, which is owned by Hasegawa, registered the trademark Othello for board games in Japan. Toscuda Original registered the trademark in the rest of the world. And all intellectual property regarding Othello outside Japan is now owned by Mega House, the Japanese toy company which acquired Toscuda Original's successor, Powbox. Some rules, if you didn't know how to play the game. Each of the discs' two sides corresponds to one player. They are referred to here as light and dark after the sides of Othello pieces. But any counters with distinctive faces are suitable. The game may, for example, be played with a chessboard and Scrabble pieces, with one player letters and the other backs. The historical version of Reversi starts with an empty board, and the first two moves made by each player are in the four central squares of the board. The players place their disc alternately with colors facing up, and no captures are made. A player may choose to not play both pieces on the same diagonal. Different from the standard Othello opening, it is also possible to play variants of Reversi and Othello, where the second player's second move may or must flip one of the opposite colored discs as variants closest to the normal games. For the specific game of Othello, the game begins with four discs placed in a square in the middle of the grid, two facing light side up and two dark side up, so that the same colored discs are on a diagonal. Convention has this such that the dark side up discs are to the northeast and southwest from both players' perspectives, though this is only marginally consequential. Where sequential openings memorization is preferred, such players benefit from this. The dark player moves first. So dark must place a piece on the board, and so that there exists at least one straight occupied, which is horizontal, vertical, or diagonal, line between the new piece and another dark piece with one or more contiguous light pieces between them. For move 1, dark has four options shown by translucently drawn pieces below. Play always alternates. After placing a dark disc, dark turns over the single disc on the line between the new piece and an anchoring dark piece. No player can look back to the previous status of disc when playing moves. A valid move is one where at least one piece is reversed, flipped over. If dark decided to put a piece in the topmost section, all choices are strategically equivalent at this time. One piece gets turned over so that the board appears thus. Now light plays, and this player operates under the same rules, with the roles reversed. Light lays down a light piece, causing a dark piece to flip. Possibilities at this time appear thus indicated by transparent pieces. Light takes the bottom left option and reverses one piece. Players take alternate turns, and basically the player with the most pieces on the board at the end of the game wins. An exception to that is if a clock is employed, then if one player defaults on time, that player's opponent wins regardless of the board configuration, with varying methods to determine the official score where one is required. In common practice over the internet, opponents agree upon a time control of typically from 1 to 30 minutes per game per player. Standard time control in the World Championship is 30 minutes, and this or something close to it is common in the over-the-board tournament play generally. In time default games where disc differential is used for tie breaks in tournaments or for rating purposes, one common over-the-board procedure for the winner of defaulted contests to complete both sides moves with the greater of the result, thereby or one disc difference in the winner's favor being the recorded score. Games in which both players have the same number of discs, their color at the end, almost always with a full board, which is 32-32 score, are not very common but also not rare, and these are designated as ties and scored as half of a win for each player in tournaments. The term draw for such may also be heard, but is somewhat frowned upon. What are generally referred to as transcript sheets are generally in use in tournament over-the-board play, with both players obligated to record their game's moves by placing the number of the move in an 8x8 grid. This both enables players to look up past games of note and tournament directors and players to resolve disputes according to whatever specific rules are in place, where claims that an illegal move, flip, or other anomaly are voiced. An alternative recording method, not requiring a grid, is also in use, where positions on a board are labeled left to right by letters A through H and top to bottom, far to near, by digits 1 through 8. Note that this is the opposite of the chess standard, where numerals running upward away from the side, white that has a through H, left to right, and also that the perspective may be that of either player, with no fixed standard, so that the very first move of a game may be based upon standard starting up, D3, C4, F5, and E6. This alternate notational scheme is used primarily in verbal discussions or where a linear representation is desirable in print, but may also be permissible as during game transcription by either or both players. Tournament play using ordinary sets rather than a computer interface, where this cannot be an issue, have various ways of handling illegal moves and over and under flipping that should not be made but are, or should be but are not. For example, permitting either player, perpetrator, or its opponent to make a correction, going back some fixed number of moves after which no remedy is available, is one procedure that has been used. Significant variants of the game, such as where the starting position differs from standard or the objective is to have the fewest pieces, one's color at the end, are sometimes but rarely played. Now, there's another one called the Brightwell Quotient, invented by British mathematician and 3 times runner-up at the World Championship and 5 times British Championship, Graham Brightwell. This is the tiebreaker that is now used in many tournaments, including the World Championship. If 2 players have the same number of points in the 13-round World Othello Championship, Swiss, the tie is resolved in favor of the player with the highest Brightwell quotient. Then you have computer opponents and research. Good Othello computers play very strongly against human opponents. This is mostly due to difficulties in human look-ahead peculiar to Othello. The interchangeability of the discs and therefore apparent strategic meaninglessness, as opposed to chess pieces, for example, make an evaluation of different moves much harder. This can be demonstrated with blindfold games, as the memorization of the board demands much more dedication from the players than in blindfold chess. The first tournament pitting Othello computer programs against human opponents took place in 1980. In it, then world champion Hiroshi Inuo, although he would go on to win the tournament, lost a game against the computer program The Moor. That's M-O-O-R. In 1997, the computer Othello program Othello defeated the reigning human champion Takeshi Murakami 6-0. Analysts have estimated the number of legal positions in Othello is at most 10 to the 28th power, and it has a game tree complexity of approximately 10 to the 58th power. Mathematically, Othello still remains unsolved. Experts have not absolutely resolved what the outcome of the game will be, where both sides use perfect play. However, analysis of thousands of high-quality games, most of them computer-generated, appears to lead to a reliable conclusion, pending actual proof if true, that on the standard 8x8 board, perfect play on both sides results in a draw. When generalizing the game to play on an n-by-n board, the problem of determining if the first player has a winning move in a given position is p-space complete. On 4x4 and 6x6 boards, under perfect play, the second player wins. The first of these proofs is relatively trivial, and the second dates to around 1990. The World Othello Championship, which started in 1977, was first organized by Japan Othello Association. From 1978 until 2004, the World Othello Championship was organized by the Othello TD Group and Anjar Corporation. In 2005, the World Othello Federation took over the responsibility for the championship. 77 to 86, each country could send one player to participate in the championship series. From 87, each country could send up to 3 players to participate. 1987, the title WOC Team Championship started. 2005, a female championship category was added to the WOC. From 2006, each World Othello Federation member could send a full team of up to 4 players. In 2016, a youth championship title was added to the WOC, and it was canceled in 2020 and 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And there you have it, friends. The world of Reversi, otherwise known as Othello. Very interesting, with a lot of rules. And if you've ever played the game, I had the game but never really played it myself, but I have heard of it, and it was, wow, a very interesting game board design. And, yeah, big time. So next time on our look at more retro toys and games, we're going to be looking at a game that dates back to almost 1928. Oh my gosh, yeah. 1928, and the way it was played, I remember it was a 2-sided game where they had, one side was the game we're going to be talking about, and the other side had the regular checkerboard. But we're going to look at Chinese checkers. Yeah, we looked at Japan and Othello. On Friday's show, we're going to look at Chinese checkers. All of that coming up on episode 15 of Jay's Retro Toys and Games. I'm Jason DeCanio. Hope you had a great time with us here on the show. We will see you on Friday. For all of us here, have a great night. Bye-bye.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Democracy Network for great more content like this one.